Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawat. You can take your mask out if you want.
Zainab, 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 Masayib, Zainab, Masayib, Zainab, Masayib, Zainab, Ya 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 Zainab, Ya'lun Nida fi Karbala, Fakhun Nisa, Sirul Iba, Ummul Ata, Ramdul Fida, Hatta Sama, Tabki Dima, As-Sabira, At-Tahira, An-Nasira, At-Taira, Ya Zainab, 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 Ya Zainab. You are the sister of, you are the daughter of Ali and Fatima binti Nabi. In honor of your family, Allah has made the skies and seas. There is no one like you, the flag bearer of truth. Ya Zainab, 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 Ya Zainab. You are the sister of Hussein and of Abbas. You will remain together. They lay face to face across from birth, no harming. They will not separate. This was all with their faith. Ya Zainab, 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 Ya Zainab. Paraded in the streets of sun with ropes and chains tied on your arms. Upon a spear was the Imam, crying, reciting the Quran. Prison, no, with no veil, your skin sunken and pale. Ya Zainab, 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 Ya Zainab. The Balisama Makari, Siena Wasinabi, Matubati, Hijabaki, Kutbi Kuru, Patirahi, Rehjata, Yeesa, Masanat Kuhilaya, Ya Zainab, 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 Ya Zainab.
MashaAllah. One loud salawat for them.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أفضل الذكر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا أبا القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله وعلى روحك وبدنك الطاهرة. صلى الله عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. Altogether, Assalamu ala al-Husayn wa ala Ali ibn al-Husayn wa ala awlad al-Husayn wa ala ashab al-Husayn خصوصا سيدي ومولاي كفيل الهواشم قمر بني هاشم مولاي بالفضل العباس. السلام عليكم جميعا يا شهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. أما بعد، قال رسول الله محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: إنما بعثت لأتمم مكارم الأخلاق. صدق رسول الله. أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. A second for the love of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. A third in honor of Aba al-Ahrar, Sayyid al-Shuhada, with your loudest of voices. Allahumma salli ala. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Islam can be summarized in one word: dignity. Islam is dignity. Islam is akhlaq. Nothing more, nothing less. If ever you wanted to summarize in one word, definition, the entirety of the purpose of the worldview that is Islam Ahlul Bayt, do not look further than the definition: dignity. There is no worldview, there is no world religion, there is no way of life except that it advocates for a dignified way of living. A life that is circulated around mannerism, around akhlaq. Even the atheistic worldview, atheists who don't have a purpose, who do not necessarily say, I have a purpose in life, or rather, life has a purpose, will tell you at least be a decent, dignified human being. Respect your self-worth. Have some dignity, even though the aim of life is ultimately relative. It's subjective. There is no purpose, objective truth, morality, ethics. That is dependent on you. But while you're at it, have some dignity where you go. Christianity advocates for dignity of the self. Judaism advocates for dignity of the self. And of course, without exception, particularly with an emphasis, Islam Ahlul Bayt. Islam is dignity, is akhlaq, nothing more, nothing less. This does not come from me. This was not made right now by me. This came from none other than man that proposed Islam through the heavens, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. When he beautifully summarized the entirety of the purpose of Islam, have you ever opened just the works, the compendium works of our maraja' before? The Minhaj al-Salihin, the A'mal al-Ibadat, let's say of Marja' X and Y. You see how many rulings do they have? This is just not even scratching the surface of the world vision of Islam and how we should live in life. Rasulullah summarized it for you. He said, my entire purpose of this life that you live as a Muslim is in one sentence. Innama, you see all of this theology. You see this etymology. You see eschatology. You see the entirety of the vision of Islam in the following sentence. Rasulullah said, this is the reason. Innama bu'ithtu li'utammima makarim al-akhlaq. Allahu Akbar. I was dispatched. Innama is different from in. Inni, he could have said that. Inni bu'ithtu, I was dispatched. Al-bi'tha, dispatch, sent. So he came from somewhere. Allah ordered him with a set of messages, hence messenger, Rasul, right? Risalah. I was sent. Innama is more emphasis than inni or inna. Innama, this is the purpose. Bu'ithtu, the bi'tha, the purpose of me being dispatched to man and womankind. لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. That's it. I want to bring forth the completion of sublime mannerism. That's all that Islam really is. Mannerism. The purpose of Islam, according to Rasulullah, is that you need to live a dignified lifestyle. And truly, when we look at the circumstances previous to Rasulullah being sent in the 7th century Arabian Peninsula, also not to forget, Islam transcends time, but look at the circumstances. The big would eat the little. Racism was prevalent. Misogyny was prevalent. Sexism was prevalent. If you were not an Arab, particularly a male, particularly from a specific clan, and you did not identify with Arab supremacy, you were seen as second-class citizen. In fact, many times you were seen as property. Those who came from Africa, seen as property. Those who were non-Arab, the Ajami, seen as property. Rasulullah came and said, La, everyone is subject to what? Dignity. Irrespective of what? Nationality, race, gender. And this was summarized in the beautiful ayah, Ya ayyuhal nas, not Ya ayyuhal ladina amanu. So who's being addressed? Man and womankind in general, or just the Muslims? Man and womankind. Ya ayyuhal nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha. There's your discussion on patriarchy, matriarchy, sexism, misogyny. We created you male and female, equal, done at the end of the day, done. We created you from male and female. وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا وَإِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. We made you nations and tribes. Racism, done, out of the way. And we made you for the purpose of getting to know one another. And Rasulullah followed it up. لا فرق بين عربي وعجمي إلا بالتقوى. There is no difference between an Arab and a non-Arab except in their consciousness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He even made it specific in other traditions. لا فرق بين أسود وأبيض. Look, it's as if he lives with us today, and he does indeed. There is no difference between black and white. Look at the words, how they transcend time with Rasulullah, except in piety. The purpose, what can be summarized in this sentence? Dignify others. Rasulullah, the meaning of his being, his messengership, him being dispatched, لِأُتَمِّمَ مَكَارِمَ الْأَخْلَاقِ. Now, if you study that sentence carefully, he said لِأُتَمِّمَ, to complete, which means what? That means there already is akhlaq, which is true. This leads us to the discussion of, can you be someone who has akhlaq and at the same time not a Muslim? Can you have high akhlaq without being Muslim? Yes, you can have akhlaq. But to have a completed way of akhlaq, Rasulullah had to be sent. I'll give an example. In the time of the 7th century Arabian Peninsula, they had akhlaq, albeit they were very bad in other areas, but they had akhlaq within themselves. So for example, 4 months out of the year, the Arabians would not engage in conflict. They said, look, give it 4 months, we should not wage war. Let's live in peace. This is a manner of akhlaq and dignity throughout the season. And Allah brought this in the Quran. You know, it's interesting. This is a culture, Islam said, accept it. There is room where culture can exist in Islam, so long as culture does not cross Sharia. This is a good culture. And Allah mentioned it in the Holy Quran. that inna عدة الشهور عند الله 12 شهرا في كتاب الله يوم خلق السماوات والأرض منها 4 حرم ذلك الدين القيم فلا تظلموا فيهن أنفسكم. The number of months to Allah are 12. Understood? Amongst them 4 that are sacred months. Do not wage war in them. No, do not have conflict in them. This was a jahiliyyah practice. Islam came and said, bring it. It's nice. We need that. Islam, if ever there is a good element of culture, Islam accepts it. This whole feud and conflict between culture versus religion, while there are problems where people will prioritize their culture above their deen. At my wedding, we're good Muslims. We're very good Muslims. But ya Habibi, we've been playing this song and guitar and so much music for the last 10 generations. You want to say no for that? It's going to affect your mother-in-law. Let's not do this. This mama, though, my deen is built around the dignified nature that culture shouldn't cross religion when it becomes something that transgresses Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Especially if you want to begin day 1 of a marriage. Don't begin day 1 on the wrong foot. Don't be surprised. And this does not mean that if you began day 1 on the wrong foot, it'll end badly. La, everyone has their own course in life and Allah has planned for them what He has planned. But if you ever want to start day 1 of a life, a bond between you and someone else, don't begin it disappointing Allah for the sake of yallah my culture. Make Allah happy, not Abdullah. In this situation, Allah has sanctioned the element of practicing culture in Islam because it dignified the human being. This showed that the 7th century Arabians, your Abu Jahls, your Abu Sufyan, your Abu Lahabs, these individuals, they had some manner of akhlaq, but to themselves. To the non-Arab, racist. To the non-Arab, brutal. To the non-Arab, stereotypical, bias. But to themselves, very good. They had another quality that Rasulullah saw was a good quality. By the way, you're talking about barbarians who would bury babies alive. We've all read the beautiful ayat. فَإِذَا الْمَوْءُودَةُ سُئِلَتْ بِأَيِّ ذَنْبٍ قُتِلَتْ. When the young infant baby girl asked, why was I killed on the day of judgment? She will make that plea. How come I was killed? Because this was common to you guys? This is why I was killed? Despite that type of practice, they had akhlaq. What was the other element of akhlaq they had? No one was more hospitable than the 7th century Arabians, brothers and sisters. In fact, today in that region of the world, and it's not just the Arabian Peninsula today, it's also the far north, west of Africa and towards the east, towards India and Pakistan, the Iranian region and Iraq. This is a custom behavior where people are hospitable. In fact, today we are in the season of what? Arba'een. You go and you see the hospitality like no other. Back then it was also emphasized, but amongst themselves. I even remember there was a Huffington Post, maybe some have heard of the very famous media platform online, Huffington Post. If we can get the noise from the back, inshallah, to lessen so that there are less distractions, inshallah. Huffington Post issued an article describing what goes on in Iraq once every year in the season of Safar, stating there is a phenomenon that never occurs ever, except in Iraq. What happens? There is a phenomenon called reverse begging. People, when they beg you to give them food, give them money. In this moment of the year, people beg you, please take my food, please take my hospitality. Are you traveling? You're a za'ir? Come, let me take care of you, let me tend to you, let me this and that. Let me try my best to make sure that you are taken absolute care of. This was also a feature found in those aristocratic people, despite how barbaric they were. Rasulullah brought that into the folds of Islam as well. Maintain your hospitality. In fact, today, if you were to go to that part of the world, be it in North Africa, West Africa, East Africa, or even Southeast Africa as well, or in Iraq, or in the Arabian Peninsula, or towards the west of India and Pakistan, you find that if you ever compliment someone or something they own, what do they feel like doing? If you compliment something they have, they will feel compelled to give it to you for free. Like for example, you say, MashaAllah, your beautiful house, that's a nice couch you have. Like, oh, do you want it? Here, take it, take it. Your compliment, you must want it. Please take it, please take it. And this is a habit that is found. If you compliment something someone owns from that particular world, mashallah, they will feel compelled to give it to you. You're complimenting me? Oh, here, take it. It's all yours. Next time you want something from someone that lives over there, be like, nice car, nice watch, nice whatever, they'll feel compelled to give it to you for free. In any case, this was found as a habit. Rasulullah extended it. Why? Because despite them being so backwards, they had some level of dignity and mannerism. So what did Rasulullah say so eloquently? I came to bring akhlaq. Well, they had some bad akhlaq. They had some bad elements, but they had some akhlaq. And not just them, the whole entire world as well. I came to complete it. This is the difference between a Muslim and a mu'min. There is someone that knows Allah, then there is someone that has ma'rifah billah, understands Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Rasulullah saw that these individuals, where they had their flaws, they also had some positives. Let me come and complete it for you, Ya ayyuhal insan. And the ayat are beautiful when it says, Ya ayyuhal nas, to all of man and womankind, subject to dignity. And this is the purpose of Islam. I even remember one of the most beautiful supplications that highlights this point is the very beautiful dua of none other than the Imam we are honoring these nights, Imam Zainul Abidin salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. Dua known as Makarim al-Akhlaq. We had a beautiful sheikh, a wonderful man. Many might know him, Sheikh Jihad Ismail. May Allah bless him, a dear friend from Australia, a dear sheikh. He wasn't born a Shi'i, was born a Sunni, and he began to research about Shia Islam. He said, what made me transition and accept the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt was when I landed through my research on Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq. It made me make a transition, and it was the catalyst. Why? Because Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq tells you the purpose of Islam, the sublime mannerism, sublime dignity, not just mannerism, sublime mannerism, the type of which completes a human being internally, externally, and spiritually, including socially as well. Read the lovely dua of the Imam. These days, we are recognizing and remembering, brothers and sisters, there have been many whose hearts have been touched by this beautiful dua of Imam al-Sajjad alayhi salam. With that being said, this lovely supplication, in fact, is something that is so useful to gift to non-Muslims. Sometimes we run and rush to go gift those who want to learn about Islam the Quran. The Quran, where it is beautiful to give to a non-Muslim and it has its place, if you don't read the Quran, what do you expect giving the Quran to a non-Muslim will accomplish? I'm not speaking about anyone in this hall, inshallah, but some of us haven't read the Quran for a very long time, and we see someone who wants to inquire about Islam. Oh yeah, here, what better book than the book of Islam? That's wrong. Because what happens when they land on an ayah like chapter 9, verse number 5, Surah At-Tawbah, فَإِذَا انْسَلَخَ الْأَشْهُرُ الْحُرُمُ فَاقْتُلُوا الْمُشْرِكِينَ حَيْثُ وَجَدْتُمُوهُمْ وَخُذُوهُمْ وَاحْصُرُوهُمْ وَاقْعُدُوا لَهُمْ كُلَّ مَرْصَدٍ. And when the sacred months have passed, remember the 4 sacred months, no war? When the sacred months have passed, kill all the disbelievers wherever you find them. Capture them, hold them, besiege them. Someone who wants to learn more about Islam, if they read the Quran, make sure they read it with the tafasir, with the content and context as well. Otherwise, what is a good source to give to a non-Muslim? When they see ayat like this, they're going to not understand what happens. Is this about all mushrikeen? Oh, I don't believe in Islam necessarily. Am I subject to this treatment? They're going to become afraid. What is a good source to provide? Dua Makarim al-Akhlaq. It invokes Allah with the salawat. And please to Allah, Ya Allah, grant me your intercession, your proximity, but in the most beautiful of manners and highlights, give me that mannerism to know you very well. You know the family of mannerism is none other than the Ahlul Bayt. I'd like to bring to you a glimpse, just a glimpse, from the universe that is Sayyidu Shuhada alayhi salam. A second beautiful source is the dua of Sayyidu Shuhada, Dua Arafah of Imam al-Hussein. Brothers and sisters, honestly, Dua Arafah You need to be someone who is willing to accept heavy, spiritual, significant lessons in order to appreciate Dua Arafah. Imam Hussein takes you to different realms with this beautiful dua. There's a line in there where he teaches us. He says, Ya Allah, this is your Imam. Ya Allah, I am not in a position to even thank you for everything you've given me. Why? Because Ya Allah, Dua Arafah, Ya Allah, for even the opportunity of saying thank you deserves a thank you, then I'll never stop thanking you. Look at the worldview of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. When I say thank you, Alhamdulillah, that moment of saying Alhamdulillah deserves another hamd, because is there anything more blessing, has more blessings to it than being able to say Alhamdulillah? That's the biggest blessing. And shouldn't you be grateful for every blessing? Then that blessing deserves Alhamdulillah. But then that Alhamdulillah deserves another. You'll never cease to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The worldview of Aba al-Ahrar, Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam. Read these beautiful supplications, brothers and sisters. If not in Muharram and Safar, read them every now and then. Try your best to understand the vision of Islam, which can be highlighted in one word: dignity. The purpose is to dignify a human being. While there were those who were backwards and evil and racist and acting literally like animals, but they walk on two legs and they can speak, Islam dignified the insan. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. And we have honored the children of Adam, honored them with the message of Islam, Ahlul Bayt. Where you did have some akhlaq, complete it. Let's look at the life of the Holy Prophet. He practiced akhlaq into 4 different categories. If you want to apply the dignified principles of Islam, do the following. Take mental notes, inshallah. See how close you emulate Rasulullah. Your first marja' deen is Rasulullah. You follow him. I want to see how close am I to Allah? Well then, look at how close you are to Rasulullah. How did he behave? Are you behaving the same way? How he spoke? Are you speaking the same way? How he engaged and interact with others? Are you doing the same thing? That gives you the response if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is near or not. And of course, Allah is always near. فَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. I am near to you, but sometimes we make ourselves distant from Allah for some reason. How you can see the distance and shorten it is by emulating Rasulullah. How do I emulate Rasulullah? Do I need to be like Rasulullah? That's impossible. That's impossible. You want to be like Rasulullah? That's impossible. Rasulullah, no one came near him except Amir al-Mu'mineen in his character. Amir al-Mu'mineen is the only one that said, I became like Rasulullah. All of us, we're attempting, but this attempt is worth it. Someone asked a question that, okay, if he and the other Ahlul Bayt are ma'sumoon, they are infallible and error-free, how on earth can I become someone like them? How can I take inspiration from someone that is error-free? I can't. When you look at people who have high admiration for sport figures, basketball players that are near 7 foot tall, mashallah, soccer players that are very strong and athletic, and you see your years have passed that I'm not going to become, for a lack of better words or for a lack of better examples, LeBron James, for example, or a Messi or a Cristiano Ronaldo. That has passed. That phase has passed. But could you still admire their athletic performance? Yeah, you can. Could you be inspired by their hard work and perseverance? Yes, you can. Do you have to be like them in order to take lessons? No, you don't. Then what is there an excuse for me to say I can't be like them? I'm not going to take any lesson from them. Of course you can. No one's saying become a carbon copy, because that's impossible. وَلَا يُكَلِّفُ اللَّهُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا. And Allah does not impose and have an expectation on a servant more than that which they can handle. And Allah gave us everything we can handle. The most beautiful way to handle is by examining these 4 elements of Rasulullah, beginning with his mannerism and akhlaq and dignity between himself and himself. Can you have akhlaq with yourself? Yes, you can. His akhlaq between himself and others. Akhlaq between yourself and others, of course, that's very obvious. Then his akhlaq between himself and the animal kingdom. You can have akhlaq to animals? Yeah, Rasulullah did. Then your akhlaq between himself and the inanimate objects. Can you have akhlaq with the non-living? Let's examine these 4 points and traits of Rasulullah such that we're able to apply them into our lives successfully, insha'Allah ta'ala, after a lot of salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. The first trait was Rasulullah's dignity and akhlaq between himself and himself. Question: can you have mannerism and dignity with yourself? I thought akhlaq was exclusive to how I behave with others. The way I sit, the way I treat, the way I speak, hi, salam, this and that. I thought that was akhlaq. La, you've all heard the phrase, respect yourself, have some dignity. Rasulullah displayed self-respect like no one else, brothers and sisters. The way he carried himself, the way he represented himself. There are those who don't care about their self-respect. They will easily portray themselves in not the most formal manner when it's supposed to be a formal gathering. Like for example, the masajid. This is a masjid. This is not your lounge or a cafe. Although at cafes, people dress better when they go instead of the masajid sometimes, unfortunately. This is a Baytullah, one of the houses of Allah where we come and worship Rabbul Alameen. Come with some dignity, some decorum. The masajid of Allah, while you are supposed to feel safe, and it is a sanctuary, you're supposed to feel comfortable, carry with yourself some dignity in the masjid of Rabbul Alameen. Where Rasulullah would ever go, he would marry that dignity with his character all the time. He would have on his person 3 things. I would like everyone's attention, inshallah ta'ala. Rasulullah, wherever he would go, he had 3 things to maintain and honor his dignity. What were these 3 things? Number 1 was a miswak. Have you guys heard of the miswak? The branch from the tree that is used to brush teeth. Sometimes if people go to Hajj, Mecca or wherever else, they bring these with them. The miswak is used to clean the teeth. And it actually works very well. This is mustahab because Rasulullah would constantly have it on his person, emphasizing the importance of oral hygiene. As Muslims, obviously, this is something we should always take into consideration. The way you smile and look and you portray yourself, especially in a world, the 21st century today, where everyone is able to access and see you, non-Muslim, Muslim alike. You want to be able to represent Islam properly. Rasulullah, wherever he would go, he would have a miswak, the hadith says. I remember there was a friend, a family friend, we went to visit in Iraq, and this person is a chain smoker, like he smokes all the time. But just as much as he smokes, he uses the miswak all the time. And it has minerals and compounds that help clean the teeth, similar to fluoride and whatnot. And I noticed his teeth were very white, despite the amount of times he smokes. So I asked him, did you ever do anything, replace them? He's like, no, I use this all the time. Now that doesn't mean that's an excuse to go smoke, but then just so long as you use the miswak, not at all. But making sure to constantly emphasize that cleanliness. It's from the sunnah of Rasulullah. This was number 1. To honor and maintain his dignity, he made sure the way he looked was in top condition. Are you taking care of that as well? Are you making sure that this is something you're on top of as well? Your Prophet did it. Is it not your role to follow his sunnah? Let's do that as well. Number 2, Rasulullah would constantly have on his person, brothers and sisters, a comb, especially for the brothers who have long facial hair or long beard. MashaAllah, Rasulullah would carry a comb with him. And whenever he needed to, he would brush his blessed facial hair, emphasizing cleanliness, to be aniq, someone with class. There are those with facial hair that looks like they deep fried it, and they look like a cast from the Pirates of the Caribbean. The worst image you can give to Islam is when you look like someone that is despicable. But then you say, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah. It's like, okay, stereotypical caveman looking Muslim, astaghfirullah. La, Rasulullah had the most beautiful of facial features. And he would constantly take care of it, and he would emphasize it by doing what, brothers and sisters? Carrying that comb with him. The third element, now for my brothers, do you carry a comb? Someone's like, I don't have hair. Okay, khalas, you're excused. But if you do, make sure you're always in top peak condition. Of course, this also does apply with the respective sisters, relative to their sisters and their gatherings only, of course, and the family, to maintain that element of displaying yourself in a proper manner. Your Prophet did it. You should do it too, inshallah ta'ala. It's not that hard at all. Just carry a bloody comb for goodness sake. The third element Rasulullah constantly had on his person was fragrances. La ilaha illallah, from fragrances. Perfume, at-tib, al-'utar. There are only, no, in fact there's only one thing in Islamic fiqh, in jurisprudence, where you can be excessive in. Everything else, if you decide to be excessive, it's haram. So if you eat halal, very good, eating good food, yes. Eating too much, reprehensible, makruh. And if it leads to a lack of good health, it can be forbidden at times, to harm yourself. Be excess with eating is haram. Excess with spending money, lousy, being someone that doesn't have priorities, do not be excessful in that regard, luxurious, lavish, okay? You can't be in excess in that. Spending so much time in sports, neglecting your priorities at home, you can't be excess. You can have, there's a degree where you can balance that. In excess, not allowed. There's only one thing in Islamic jurisprudence where you're allowed to be excessive in, and Rasulullah said it very clearly. This is a hadith, by the way, that is accepted by partisans, Sunni and Shia. La israfa fil itri. There is no excessiveness in fragrances. That's your license to buy Aventus Creed, Dior Sauvage, Bleu de Chanel, Yves Saint Laurent, YSL. What else is there? Gucci, Prada. Who else? I heard something. Tom Ford. Very expensive, by the way. MashaAllah on you. What else is there? Chanel number 47 for the women. I don't know. Anyways, an excuse, a reason. Now, obviously, you have to have your priorities checked instead of just, starving yourself when you could have, for your family, and you spent it all on Tom Ford or Gucci, Mucci, whatever. But in any case, Rasulullah, what was he doing when he made this the one exception? Emphasizing, make sure the impression you give to others is a positive, clean one. Even if you have the best and most beautiful, eloquent things to share and say, if you smell bad, no one's going to listen. In fact, not only are they not going to listen, they're going to say all Muslims must be like that. Generalization. Do people not generalize? People generalize, right? Generalizing is bad. But if people will generalize, at least generalize all Muslims for a good reason. MashaAllah, you smell amazing. Maybe all, your name's what? Ali? Maybe all Ali smell amazing. MashaAllah, you smell very good. Your impression, the impression that you gave is very nice. Maybe all people that follow your way and your character and your worldview and your vision and your way of life have the same feature. Make sure you emphasize that, my dear respected brothers and sisters. Rasulullah's dignity and mannerism between himself and himself. In fact, I remember the lovely hadith from Sayyid al-Shuhada, found in Shaykh Baqir al-Sharif al-Qarashi's work on the life of the A'imma. He mentions a lovely tradition that describes how much Imam Hussein alayhi salam loved fragrances, mentioning وَكَانَ الطِّيبُ مُحَبِّبًا إِلَيْهِ فَكَانَ الْمِسْكُ لَا يُفَارِقُهُ فِي حِلِّهِ وَتِرْحَالَهِ. And طيب, fragrance, طيب, beauty, beautification, that which is good, was also a term used for fragrances. الطِّيبُ مُحَبِّبًا إِلَيْهِ. Imam Hussein loved fragrances. Notice your Imam. في حله وترحاله. And he loved it, and he would always have fragrances on him, whether he was staying at home, whether he wasn't traveling, or tirhala, or when he would travel. People that travel don't really fragrance themselves. Like, I'm not here for too long, why would I? No. He would. Wherever he would go, he would have that lovely scent with him. And it says the continuation of that, and وَكَانَ الْمِسْكُ, that misk is musk, that beautiful fragrance either from plants or elsewhere. It was always on his person. كَمَا كَانَ بُخُورَ الْعُودِ فِي مَجْلِسِهِ. Just as the incense, you guys have seen the oud, incense, would always be found in his majlis whenever he would hold a gathering, or whenever you would sit in the blessed presence of Abul Ahrar. We ask you, Ya Allah, grant us the honor to sit with our Master alayhi salam one day. Whenever you would sit with him, the oud would always be on. So that incense, that aroma, and this is something that is really appreciated everywhere. Here, there's a word for it, aromatherapy. People appreciate good senses. When you have a guest come over, make sure that the atmosphere smells good. You know, this can have an effect on someone mentally. Bergamot, there are a lot of senses that calm an individual. You know, lavender, these things called aromatherapy, they actually give your mood a boost. Aba Abdullah would emphasize this in his majlis, and whenever he would travel, and whenever he would be at home. And in fact, the hadith says, when we read the maqatil, a day or two before Karbala, a qafila, a caravan came and traveled through Nainawa, which is where Karbala is, that province. A caravan was making its way from Yemen. As it was making its way, Aba Abdullah approached it with his family. Abu al-Fadl alayhi salam was with him, and a few companions, Habib bin Mudahar as well. They came to the caravan. Imam Hussein saw they had fragrances, oud, they had rather tib, fragrances, utar. He looked at them and he said, how much? And they gave him a price. Imam Hussein bought all that they had. That night he told his companions, the Ansar, the Sahaba of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Habib, Nafi', Zuhair, all of them, he said, everyone, tomorrow we will fight. I need you all to bathe in these fragrances. Why? Why would he say bathe in them? It's as if he knows, salamullahi alayh, that we won't be buried for 3 days. While we lay there, let your body emit a beautiful smell. The body lays like that for 3 days, especially after it was cut up, alayhi salam. Sometimes it could leave that smell that might bother someone. He says, no, make sure you drench yourself with these fragrances. I know what's going to happen. No one's going to bury us. So let the people, when they walk by our bodies, they smell nothing but beauty, inshallah ta'ala. And so Abu Abdullah bought it, and he made sure all of his family and companions who he knew would die tomorrow, made sure they bathed in it practically, salamullahi alayhi, emphasizing fragrances. Are you here in the masjid wearing a fragrance right now? It's mustahab to pray with fragrance on you. Why? When you go for an interview, that boss that's standing, you would put the most expensive stuff on you. You would comb your hair. You would wear the most expensive of this and that. When you have a meeting with Allah, it's the most last concern that you have. When you stand and fragrance yourself, then you pray to Allah, Allah takes that into consideration. The ahadith say you get more ajr for doing so. Men and women alike, by the way. Men and women alike in the traditions. When you stand and be presentable to Allah in prayer, you have ajr that is mudha'af, increased in thawab, because you took care of yourself. This is not a meeting. For a boss application, a job application, when I meet that boss, I go crazy on how I prepare. I remember there was a phone call a friend had during quarantine, and the job interview was through the phone. Couldn't meet in person. And it was a big deal. He was getting interviewed, actually. It's an internship. And the phone call was at 2. He got to the phone at 12. Ya Habibi, why? He's like, this is a very important phone call. It's a phone call. He started combing his hair. Like, why? He's like, oh, you don't know this is a big deal. I have to be presentable. But for who? Your iPhone? He's like, no, it's a big deal. I want to be in a good shape. It's okay. 15 minutes before the call, he starts putting fake. I'm like, what are you doing? Perfume? Why? It's a phone call. But it's an important meeting. When Rabbul Alameen calls you 5 times a day, at least be presentable in that matter. Get your priorities set. This was with Rasulullah and the Ahlul Bayt, their dignity within themselves and themselves. Second, Rasulullah's mannerism and dignity between himself and others. Where do I need to begin? Where do I need to begin? How can I begin giving you an example about Rasulullah's mannerism amongst others? I really don't know if I can do justice with that. They are the family of mannerism and akhlaq. This entire religion was built on mannerism and dignity. Let us just look at a brief glimpse of the mannerism and etiquette of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Uday bin Hatim al-Ta'i was a companion of the Holy Prophet. His father, Hatim al-Ta'i, was a very famous poet, a sha'ar. Uday came to Medina. He wanted to inquire about Islam. He heard about it. He liked it. And they said, we'll get you a meeting with the man himself. Imagine you have a meeting with Rasulullah. He came to Masjid al-Nabawi, Uday bin Hatim al-Ta'i. Watch this. When he entered the masjid, it's him and Rasulullah only, right? Rasulullah was seated. What did Rasulullah do when he saw the guest, Uday bin Hatim, come to inquire and learn more about Islam? stood up. A lesson. When someone comes to visit you, stand up. It's worth it. Rasulullah, as if to highlight, I am not going to sit comfortable while you still standing. I will wait for you to sit, then I will sit with you. A lesson for all of us. Beautiful lesson. Already, the man is coming to learn about Islam. Rasulullah hasn't said a word and he's already learning so much. I'm not surprised. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, 6th Imam says, كُونُوا دُعَاةً لَنَا بِغَيْرِ أَلْسِنَتِكُمْ. Be a source of du'at, da'wah, invite people to us without using your tongue. So what should I use? My mannerism. Rasulullah hasn't spoken a word. He's already standing up and giving him lessons, plethora of lessons about Islam already. Then he says, Assalamu alayka ya Uday. He sends the salams first, not waiting for him. Salam alaykum. Someone sitting on their high horse, saying, no, people have to say salam to me. Who are you, Baba? Come on. Rasulullah, with all his majesty, says the salams. He races to say salam to the children before they say salam to him first. And Rasulullah says, Salamu alaykum ya Uday. Check. Number 2, he stood up. Great akhlaq. Said the salam to me. Great akhlaq. Check. Number 2, then what happened? When they sat down, there was that pillow that you lean against when you sit against a wall, right? Especially back then, they would lean against walls. Rasulullah had one pillow. Uday did not. What did Rasulullah do? He grabbed that pillow from behind him and said, here, Uday, lean against this. It's more comfortable for you. I will lean against the wall. Uday immediately looked at Rasulullah with a tear rolling down his eye, saying, I came here just to learn. You haven't said anything. I've learned so much. Enough is enough. I don't need to ask any questions. وَإِنِّي أَشْهَدُ أَنْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَأَنَّكَ أَنْتَ يَا مُحَمَّدْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. A man entered Islam through the akhlaq of Muhammad. A man entered Islam through the mannerism of Rasulullah. Not a word was said, yet the man embraced Islam. Rasulullah's akhlaq between himself and others. Himself and himself. What was the third thing? Akhlaq between himself, the dignity, and the animal kingdom. Question, can you have respect to animals? Yes. One day Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi was taking the companions to the expedition of Tabuk. Tabuk, north of Medina, was a land. The Byzantium Empire at the time threatened the Muslims. And so the Muslims needed to defend. So they went to the land of Tabuk. In the 9th year after Hijrah, they went to that land. As they got there, the Byzantiums decided to fall back. There was no war. The war never happened. They saw the Muslims, they were afraid, they left. When Rasulullah, however, was on his way, you imagine men, swords, shields, metal, steel, iron, thousands of men, right? Mobilized units in a pattern, walking straight. There's a heavy deal of people. Jibreel came down, said, Ya Rasulullah, Assalamu alayka, Ya Habiballah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has informed us, ahead of you, a bird has laid an egg in the middle of the road. Your men, if they keep continuing the same path, they'll stomp on the bird and the newly laid egg. The bird was pregnant, laid an egg. It's too tired to fly away. So your men will step on it, Ya Rasulullah. So do something about it. You know what Rasulullah did? He ordered someone to run ahead of them, take a flag, put it near where the bird was when he finds it and the egg, and make it a mark. The men, when they would see it, they would go around it, not over it. They asked Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, why are we changing course? You know, all these men, swords, shields, weapons, it's not easy to say all of us go this way instead of this way. Why? Is the enemy there? Why are we moving course? You know what Rasulullah said? No, it's just a bird laid an egg. What? We're moving all of, it's like tanks. Back then, these were your tanks, lances and horses and leagues. Why are we moving our course? You said, yeah, a bird laid an egg and we don't want to step on it and kill it. مَنْ لَمْ يَرْحَمَ الْمَخْلُوقِ لَمْ يَرْحَمْهُ الْخَالِقِ. Who does not have mercy on the creation, the Creator will not have mercy on you. I remember in the Maqatil, you read the Maqtal or you heard it. There was a moment where Imam Hussein alayhi salam makes it to the Furat. You remember that moment? He makes it when? After every one of his family is killed. Salamullahi alayh. He actually gets to the Furat. He gets there alayhi salam, he's very thirsty. And he drops down from his horse, Dhul Janah. He approaches the river Furat and he puts his hands to drink. Finally, thirst's killing. He raises the water, alayhi salam, and he looks at the horse. Read them, every maqtal says this. He looks at the horse and he sees the horse is thirsty. And he says the line, أنت عطشان وأنا عطشان فلا أشرب حتى تشرب. فرفع رأسه كأنه فهم الكلام. And the horse raised its head as if it knew what Imam Hussein was saying. He said, you're thirsty and I am thirsty, but I will not drink until you drink. And the horse raised his head as if he knew what the Imam was saying. And this is not a surprise. He is the inheritor of the man who had the akhlaq like no other, Rasulullah. He inherited, Assalamu alayka ya waritha Muhammadin Habibillah. He inherits Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's traits and values. And he looks at that horse. You're thirsty and I'm thirsty, but I won't drink until you drink. The horse didn't drink. Imam never drank and he died thirsty on that day. Look at the mannerism of Ahlul Bayt. The animal kingdom was subject to it as well. Then you find the mannerism of Rasulullah. We said what? Between himself and himself. Between himself and others. Between himself and the animal kingdom. Then what? Between himself and the inanimate object. Can you have akhlaq to something that doesn't exist? Something that can't talk back to you? Yeah. Will you agree in the Quran, in Islam and Islamic theology in general, there are pieces of land that are more sanctified than other? Do we accept that? For example, Musa alayhi salam entering the valley. What does Allah say in the Quran? This is the Quran. He says, فَأَخْلَعْنَا عَلَيْكَ إِنَّكَ بِالْوَادِ الْمُقَدَّسِ طُوَى. Ya Musa, remove your slippers, the sandals that you have. You are in the sacred valley Tuwa. Have respect. A geographic piece of land, earth, rocks, dirt, sand. I have to have respect for the inanimate? Yes. This is why we wear certain stones. The aqiq, the fayruz, the what else? The door. Because we believe there are elements in life that testify to Allah and that are more blessed than others. I love Brooklyn Park. Brooklyn Park? Okay, Brooklyn Park. But I don't think it's as spiritually significant as Najaf al-Ashraf or Mecca al-Mukarramah or Medina. Correct? I would imagine. Then you have valleys that are blessed. Geographic pieces of land. Where did we come up with this? The Quran. يُسَبِّحُ لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Everything glorifies Allah. Whatever lies in the heavens and in the earth. That's everything. So there are inanimate objects in this world that have some dignity to them. Rasulullah would show dignity to even the inanimate. For example, he gave his blessed imamah, the turban he would wear, he gave it a name. He named it. He called it as-sahab. He also named his sword. Oh, we all know the famous sword, Dhul Fiqar. Why is it called that? That's its title. It's a sword, but it has a name. Inanimate, but it has a name. You dignify these things. Why? Because it's not an ordinary tool sent from the heavens. Rasulullah gifted. This is a blessed thing. He would name his horse. He named even his mule. He named everything had dignity, was subject, even the inanimate objects. Brothers and sisters, let us carry this vision of dignity from an Islamic perspective throughout our lives. Let us do these four, implement them, emulate Rasulullah, and you will know how close you are to Allah by doing so. But the best way to do so, brothers and sisters, is by beginning the emulation, the following of His blessed family. And in the season we are commemorating today, how the family of Rasulullah was treated very negatively, and their dignity was affected. Their dignity they transgressed over, was stomped on. The family of dignity, look at how people are honoring their dignity. When Imam Zainul Abidin enters Sham, he sees a man cursing him, slandering him and the other women of Imam Hussein from his daughters and wives. And he curses him and he says, may Allah curse you and everyone that is with you, you Khawarij, you infidels, cursing Ahlul Bayt, calling them Khawarij. When this happens, Imam says, let me ask you a question. Have you read the ayah of the Holy Quran? قُلْ مَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. The man said, yes. He says, have you read the ayah in the Holy Quran? وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّمَا غَنِمْتُم مِّن شَيْءٍ فَإِنَّ لِلَّهِ خُمُسُهُ وَلِلرَّسُولِ وَلِذِي الْقُرْبَى. He says, yes. He says, have you read the ayah in the Holy Quran that إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهَ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. The man said, yes. He said, who were these revealed for? The man said, Ahlul Bayt. Then he said, who are we then? We are the Ahlul Bayt mentioned in these ayat of the Quran. And look at how people are treating us. The man began to cry, saying, Sayyidi, forgive me. I didn't know. I was simply told that you were a bunch of infidels. Look at the dignity that was transgressed, brothers and sisters. Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam saw everything throughout his journey and throughout his life. He would constantly lament Aba Abdullah al-Hussein until he would approach one day returning. He lived 34 years after Karbala. He approached a man he saw getting ready to slaughter a sheep. He said, oh man, have you given the sheep some water? Said, yes, I have. He then looked at Karbala and he said, Assalamu alayka ya abati. My father died while he wasn't given any water, and the sheep gets water before it's slaughtered. Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, the dignity was transgressed, brothers and sisters. As his final moments approached, he lay, by his side was Imam al-Baqir salamullahi alayh. And he saw Imam al-Baqir would witness the constant flow of tears from his father. But in this moment, he saw his father crying excessively. And he cried and cried. And he says, Father, why are you crying so much now? In a few moments, you're going to meet Rasulullah. In a few moments, you will meet Fatima Zahra. In a few moments you will meet Amir al-Mu'mineen. In a few moments you will meet Aba Abdullah. Father, why do you cry? In a few moments you will return to your blessed father Hussein. Imam Zainul Abidin looked at his son Muhammad al-Baqir, and he began to embrace him as he felt the poison surround him. He said, my beloved son, you are embracing me right now and hugging me in my heart. As you hug me, I have you by my side. But who was by the side of my father Hussein in his final moments? Right now you are with me on my chest. But who was on the chest of my father Hussein? When Imam al-Baqir came to wash the body of Imam Zainul Abidin, he saw on his back 2 bruises and marks. He would say, the first one, I know where it came from. It came from the bag he would carry, giving food to the orphan. But the second one confused me until I reflected and realized it was from the stabbing of the travel between Karbala and Kufa. I saw the bruises on my father. He never spoke of them, and he kept them to himself. Until when I washed him, I saw the marks and stabs around his neck. Those were the shackles they would give and wear. Imagine a shackle over the neck for one day. How much does it bother a person? Imam Zain al-Abidin wore that same shackle with spikes for an entire month. Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam began to cry in that moment, and he began to say, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah Ma'tam al-Hussein. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.